Hi, I'm Molly, a licensed insolvency practitioner at Parker Walsh, and I'm going to be discussing how long liquidation takes. So there are three types of liquidation. There is a Creditors Voluntary Liquidation, which is probably the most common. That's where the directors would appoint someone like myself to assist them in getting the company into liquidation. Then I take over as liquidator, sell the assets, distribute to the creditors, and then close the liquidation. The other type of liquidation is compulsory liquidation. This is commonly where the creditors haven't been paid and they issue a petition to wind the company up. So at a hearing, the company is wound up through the courts, and that's known as a compulsory liquidation. That's handled by the official receiver, which is a government body, and they would similarly sell the assets and distribute to the creditors. And then we have members voluntary liquidation, and that's the solvent liquidation. That's essentially where the company's been very successful and is no longer retired. Perhaps someone's retiring or changing career, and they just need to close down that company and extract the money. So essentially that money, rather than being paid to the creditors, creditors would be paid in full, but then the majority of that money pay the creditors and then it goes to the shareholders. So those are the three types of liquidation: creditors voluntary liquidation, compulsory, and members voluntary liquidation. Now, in regards to timelines, so a creditors voluntary liquidation is something that I would handle, and typically it takes, I would say, 4 weeks to get it into liquidation, between 3 and 4 weeks to get it into liquidation. If we're missing information that we need, that can prolong it, or if the director goes on holiday for a couple of weeks, that can delay matters. But essentially, you're looking at about 3 to 4 weeks to get it into liquidation. Then once it's in liquidation, it will depend on what assets there are. If there are no assets and no queries, no investigational matters, the liquidation will close probably at about month 6. If there are lots of assets or say book debts or work in progress, that's obviously going to prolong it. But I would say on average about 6 to 9 months for a standard liquidation to be closed. But a director's not involved as much once it goes into liquidation. It's more the liquidator. It'd be someone like me dealing with all the work. So don't be too concerned that it does take, say, 6 to 9 months to actually close, because that's just me doing my statutory duties. Then in regards to a compulsory liquidation, now that's through the courts, so it all depends on the court's availability. So you're talking months rather than weeks to get it into liquidation. It's not quick. So it could be between, say, 2 to 4 months to actually get it into compulsory liquidation, but it would depend on the backlog of the courts. I know obviously from COVID, that created a backlog because there weren't the hearings, they were put on hold. So it did create this huge backlog in all systems, and they're still working through it years later. So it is quite a slow process to get it into liquidation. It is slower than a creditors voluntary liquidation. But once it's in liquidation, it is then dealt with by the official receiver, which is a government body, and they have their own timescales. And then in regards to a members voluntary liquidation, if we remember, that's the solvent one, and essentially that is dealt with by me, someone like me, and essentially members voluntary liquidation is very quick. So I would say, assuming we've got all the information, it takes 5 to 10 business days to get it into liquidation. We've got all our standard forms. All we need to know is the facts about the company, so we issue a questionnaire. So as soon as we've got that, we can then get it into liquidation relatively quick, in a matter of a couple of weeks. Once it's in liquidation, if there are any creditors, we would need to pay them. But let's just say there are no creditors, they've all been paid previously, and it's a simple cash distribution, which means the company's got a lot of money within its bank account and it's going to the shareholders. The only delay, I would say, is getting it from the bank. So it depends who you bank with, but obviously the private banks send them across to us very quick, in a matter of days. The online banks are actually quite efficient, and then you've got your high street banks, and they can be quite slow. They can take 4 weeks to get the money across to us. But once we've got that money and we've done all our checks, etc., we will then distribute the money to the shareholders. It's a relatively quick process. We can do it in a couple of days. So members' voluntary liquidation is relatively quick. Once we've made the distribution, assuming everything else has been dealt with, we would close around about month 6 again. And again, it's a similar scenario that once the shareholders have been paid their money, all that's left is the statutory duties that I do. So the directors aren't involved for that 6 months of the members' voluntary liquidation. It's just whilst I do my administration tasks, it stays open and then I close it. So in conclusion, creditors voluntary liquidation, on average 3 to 4 weeks to get it into liquidation, and then for that liquidation to close 6 to 9 months. With a compulsory liquidation, I'd say 2 to 4 months to get it into, get it at the hearing in the court, and then the liquidation, well, dealt with by the official receiver, so they can comment on how long it would take them. And then you've got your members' voluntary liquidation, which is 5 to 10 days to get into liquidation. And then if it's a high street bank, say maximum 4 weeks to get the money, we'd turn it around within the week and get the cash distribution made, and then it'd be closed, the liquidation within about 6 months. So those are your timescales. So I hope that's helped. Okay, thank you very much.